Please welcome one of the world's most passionate advocates for the poor and oppressed, Mr. King. Thank you so much for joining us. And then King, can I introduce? Would you like me to introduce your role? Yes. Please. Sorry, I was going to do it first. Oh, it's so nice to be here. Yes. Okay, so we got even luckier. Can I tell you, we are even more blessed because Arndrea Waters King, she's dedicated her life to public service as well. She's a passionate leader in the global fight against inequity, injustice, against hate crimes, and all forms of pain. Throughout her life, if you watched her, you've seen that she's closely worked on behalf of those marginalized, particularly through the DMI. So you know the Drum Major Institute, really incredible work through her presidency of the Drum Major Institute. We are thrilled to have both Kings here. Please give it up one more time.
Good morning. Good morning. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. Not because of what happened 2 years ago, but for all of the people since that day who have continued to be beacons for peace, for justice, for equity, and for our democracy. You know, I'm here as an activist, but I'm also here first as a mother. At a time when civics have been taken out of our classrooms, at a time when history is being taken out of our classrooms, the fact that our children's very first examples of government is not about the greatness of America, but it was about the destruction of America. And I think it's also important to realize that when Martin Luther King Jr. talked about his dream, and he talked about his 4 little children, he only has one granddaughter, our daughter, Yolanda Renee King. And she's 14 years old. I can't imagine what he would think that that granddaughter has progressively lost rights since she was born. The rights in which he and her grandmother, Coretta Scott King, and so many others worked and dedicated their lives to. What we saw here 2 years ago was a physical attack on our democracy. But what we have seen since then in some ways is even more insidious. We've seen the structural attack on our democracy. We are seeing laws that should lift us all up being used to limit and roll back hard-won rights. We're seeing Martin Luther King Jr.'s granddaughter now with less voting rights than the day that she was born. And let me make it plain for you. She was born in 2008. Since she was born, what was left of the Voting Rights Act has continually been chipped and diminished. We live in the state of Georgia. So she lives in a state in 2020 that passed one of the most draconian examples of voting rights legislation. She also lives in a state and a country where she has less rights as a female than she had a year ago. That is not the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. nor Coretta Scott King. And this year, as we are going to be celebrating in August, the 60th anniversary of one of the greatest demonstrations, the greatness of America, the greatness of democracy, it is our hope, it is our desire that we as a nation, we as a people, once and for all fully realize the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. Coretta Scott King talked about each generation having to feed the flames of peace, of justice, and equity. And I hope that as we go back at our homes today, we ignite within our soul and hearts and renew ourselves to continuing to feed the flames of peace, of justice, and equity. Because no matter what it looks like, no matter how long it takes, truth and justice always has won, always will win. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I would like to say that I am honored to be here, but I'm really saddened to be here on the anniversary 2 years ago that American citizens came to the United States Capitol with the intent of destroying our government. It is said that a people that do not remember their history are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. That was tragic history 2 years ago. We have to figure out, how do we build, not destroy, not tear down. In fact, what Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King taught us was how we can disagree without being disagreeable. Every demonstration that my father was involved in and my mother were involved in were nonviolent and peaceful demonstrations. You see, humankind is God's highest creation. But yet we seem to devolve to lower animal forms sometimes to resolve conflict. We are better than the behavior that was exhibited back then. And so today we are here to talk about, how do we continue to build democracy? Dad talked about also a voteless people being a powerless people. And one of the most important steps that we must take is that short step to the ballot box. We're having another election again. Well, somewhere in this country every year we do. But we should always engage in building and expanding democracy. But it takes us, the people, to do that. The congressman just shared with us what's happening right behind us. We never seen this in 160-something plus years, where we can't even elect a speaker so that the people's business in the lower house can be handled. And I guess we have to ask the question, what are the people going to do? Because when we're engaged, change occurs. But when we sit by idly, nothing can happen. I can't imagine that if my mother and father were living, that they would not be calling forth on us as people coming together. We know there is a maybe silent majority. There's a majority that must stand up, that must keep moving forward, so that all of these issues that Arndrea just enumerated can be addressed. I never thought or could have imagined that our daughter would have less rights today than she had when she was born, right as President Obama was being elected and later on inaugurated. And she has less rights. Something needs to tell us that there's something wrong in this land. There's something wrong, and there's something, however, that we can do about it. It only takes, my dad and others showed us, and my mother, a few good women and men to bring about change. Doesn't necessarily take masses, just a few who are willing to say, I'm going to be there until we get this right. We can be a great nation, but we're not there yet. This will be the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, and we will work to realize the dream. And we're going to invite the nation to join us as we once again talk about all the rights that not only people deserve, but rights that people inherently should be enjoying. I know we are a better society than we're behaviorally exhibiting now. But I want to urge you to stay on this battlefield. Just a few of us here today, but that's not reflective of what's in the hearts and minds of many. So keep fighting. Keep standing for truth. Keep standing for justice. Don't give in. Don't give up. Don't give out. We are going to make America truly the great nation that it ought to be for all Americans. Thank you, and God bless all of you always.